Hi, and welcome to the Midday Market Update for October 13th, 2020. My name's Kevin Hill, as always, here with the man, the dude, Michael Vincent.
Hey, welcome everybody to our live interactive show, Midday Market Update. We're on, what are we on? We're on LinkedIn, Facebook. Get your questions, your comments in. We'll address them as best we can. We got a great show today, though, huh?
We do. We have the CEO of Redwood, Mark Yeager, coming up at 12:30.
We absolutely do.
And then Richard Sharpe from Competitive Intelligence at 12:40, joining us both via video calls. But as always, let's get the show kicked off right with headlines from FreightWaves.com. And if you're not a subscriber to our newsletter, all the day's top stories, you can go to FreightWaves.com and sign up there. So Andrew Cox, what do we have headlines today?
New trailers hit 52,000 in September. That's the third largest month on record. FDR Transportation Intelligence reported Monday that September's orders were 23,500 units above August and 33,400 units above September of last year. The great majority of these September orders came from dry vans, but there was robust orders in refrigerated vans as well. The sluggish recovery in industrials and lack of flatbed demand didn't really warrant an influx of flatbed orders. Carriers are really just riding this e-commerce wave, something we talk about on Great Quarter Guys all the time. They understand that it will be some time before Americans are able to go and spend money on the services that we all love to spend money on, whether it's going to football games or concerts or going to amusement parks or staying out and going on vacation. Those things aren't available to us. So they are expecting that trend of Americans to spend more on goods. They're expecting that trend to continue into the new year and are buying up extra vans to prepare for that.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew. I'm interested in your take and yours as well, Kevin, or anybody in the audience as well. You know, these 52,000 units is the third highest month in history, 52,000 units, and you've got the issue with drivers, seating trucks, et cetera. How much of this do you think is expansion and how much is replacement, or is it a bit of both, or what's your feeling there?
Well, I got to say that I am still new to the industry. I was coming in there at the end of 2018, but it feels a lot like what it did back there in 2018 when the market was good, rates were high throughout the middle of the year, and then everybody started buying trucks and trailers and expanding greatly. And then within 6 months, the market kind of turned. There wasn't as many volumes as they were expecting in 2019. It just feels eerily similar to that right now. Whether this is expansion or just a replacement, I'm not sure, but it just feels a lot like 2018.
Yeah, tractor orders are just barely above replacement, but they've grown month over month sequentially. So it does. I mean, Andrew, you're exactly right. It feels a lot like 2018 when all the trucking companies were expanding their fleets to go out and get volumes. One of the major differences, and we had Marilyn Serber from 10th Street on last week when we were talking about this, is new driver training. Traditionally, it's been 6 students for every instructor, and because of COVID and restrictions and social distancing, it's only 2 students for every instructor right now, and that's probably going to go on for the next 6 to 12 months, which is a huge bottleneck into seating all those trucks and to pull all those new trailers that people are ordering.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feels exactly the same to me. Except the difference is this. You know, we're in a completely different economic state right now with the purchasing habits of the American citizens and the world really. And so, I'm not looking for that downturn anytime soon.
I'm not either. I'm not either. There is one trucking company in Texas that kind of hit a tough spot because of fracking and the oil business. What do we have on Trinity Logistics?
Yeah, Kevin, in an abrupt closure that left some drivers blindsided, Texas-based Trinity Logistics Group is ceasing operations due to a lack of work. When I saw a lack of work, I was a little surprised. You know, everybody in the logistics industry right now that is focused on the retail and consumer side are doing very well. But I quickly learned that Trinity focuses on flatbed, oversized, and heavy haul services. As we mentioned earlier in reference to the trailer orders, the flatbed demand is currently weak across the country. Trinity Logistics Group had 102 drivers and 150 power units. A source said that all drivers were able to be paid for their work through the end and were not stranded without working fuel cards, as was the case in some big recent bankruptcies, including Celadon and Falcon Transport of Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. We talked about the the stimulus package early on, and would, even despite the upturn in the economy and the freight market, would there be a rash of people going out of business anyways, right? Because they were being floated by this thing. We really haven't seen too much of that, have we?
We haven't, and Trinity is an interesting case too, because they are a subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary of Trinity Industries, which is a huge rail car manufacturer. So this is an independent 100-truck fleet. This is as part of a large conglomerate of companies and industrial, kind of in all different kinds of industries down based out of Dallas.
Yeah, they're definitely in a vertical that has been hurting. So they're not enjoying the volumes that other van and reefer are enjoying right now. That's
they are certain. Not. They were tied closely to the oil field, and we know that the story of oil over the last 6 to 8 months, it has been as volatile as you can get. Switching gears to the consumer.
Yeah.
Apple and Apple's new delivery system. What do we have on that, Andrew?
Yeah, Kevin, Apple has announced that it will ship the upcoming iPhone 12 orders from its stores in an unprecedented move. The change has many theorizing about whether this is going to be a one-shot deal prompted simply by the strange economic conditions that we're in, or whether this is the change, a sustainable change that Apple's going to make to kind of get away from centralized distribution, which is something that Apple has relied on since its beginning. In any case, the move could prompt other businesses to look into shipping from stores. I mean, let's face it, Apple has the business power and just the overall strength to change the way that other retailers behave. And when Apple does something like providing new value-added options, similar to what Amazon does, others take notice. And while this is new for Apple, the idea of positioning stores as mini DCs isn't a new trend, nor is it any longer on the fringe of supply chain strategies. Apple is projected to sell about 50 million of these new 5G iPhone 12 units. That number is down significantly from the initial projection that came out last year, which was around 100,000 units. It then fell to 75 a couple months ago, but they've brought it all the way down to 50 million units. Apple will use its 300 stores in the US and Canada as mini DCs and will leverage FedEx and UPS to complete the deliveries. The Apple iPhone event is scheduled for this afternoon. It will be really interesting to see if Tim Cook or anybody else from Apple addresses this change during the event. So just make sure to check into FreightWaves. We're going to be updating this story as it evolves.
It's interesting to watch this development, Andrew and Kevin, just because are they looking to avoid what could be a slowdown to market because of air cargo? Right, because traditionally, don't they ship from DCs, or they ship directly from Asia during this period of time, right? And they're looking up to suck up a lot of capacity with these moves and with this demand during this peak season. And with the threat of that slowing the cycles down, you've got the pull forward of to today. Isn't today the Prime Day?
It is. It started at 3 a.m. our time.
Yeah, starting yes. Right. Yeah. So with that pull forward, et cetera, trying to avoid those cycle times, is this just a move for that, or is this the wave of the future for Apple to deliver everything right out of those storefronts? It's a risky business to change your retail operations to a mini warehouse micro distribution. Well, you got to retrain people.
As Andrew mentioned too, I mean, it's not on the tertiary, or it's not outside the bounds anymore. This is a very mainstream thing.
Yeah,
this is
really
what all retailers are doing, right, Andrew?
Yeah, Kevin, I actually spoke to Brian York during the Last Mile Summit. He's the CEO of Lift It, a Latin American final mile company. And he talks about in Brazil, especially, this is where it had been most developed. But many of the storefronts there, especially because of COVID, but in general, are moving to a direct-to-consumer kind of DC model where you can either pick it up in store, order online and pick up in store, or just have it delivered from the store. So I think you're going to see this trend continue. I mean, we're going to see it out of malls. We've heard rumors from Amazon to Walmart to a lot of different people trying to partner with malls and get into some of that as a potential DC space. But this is not a new trend, and it definitely will continue moving forward, especially in a post-COVID world where people are going to be masked up, afraid to go in stores, and they're going to look to get their goods with touchless delivery as quickly as possible.
I definitely agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just what you're seeing, curbside delivery, all of these different trends that have really accelerated over the last 6 to 8 months. I mean, it is going to continue. And part of that continuance is a capacity crunch in global parcel capacity. What do we have there, Andrew?
Yeah, Kev, small package volumes in the world's 13 major markets during 2020 will range between 115 billion and 132 billion in 2020, according to Pitney Bowes. This is equated to a massive growth over 2019. 2019 was actually the first time that we even cracked 100 billion parcel mark. So the growth is expected to also stay elevated for the next few years. Pitney Bowes expects global parcel traffic it actually says that it could surge north of 300 billion parcels per year by 2026, but that number will largely depend on the level of e-commerce growth post-COVID. That projection is admittedly on the high side. They say a more realistic forecast is in the range of 220 billion to 226 billion parcels by 2026. Still, even at that level, that would represent a 15% CAGR or growth rate over the next 6 years, which many industries will not be able to match. This is the 5th annual parcel shipping index from Pitney Bowes, and it's actually the first time that the company has given a range of what they expect the projections to be rather than giving a specific number. And this change reflects the unprecedented lack of clarity over the future parcel growth spawned on by this global pandemic.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knows exactly where it's going to be at 2026. I mean, even under normal, it's a little bit difficult to track those or project those other than your normal cycle growth, right? You look at the growth rates and your historic trends, et cetera, and what's, different laws, trends, but this has certainly mixed everything up.
Yeah. 6 months is hard enough. 6 years is unfathomable right now.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
It's a little bit insane to think about forecasting something out 6 years.
Yeah.
Any trends whatsoever. And talking about trends at 2 p.m., Andrew and I will be doing great quarter guys. And what do we have on schedule for today's episode?
Yeah, Kevin, we're going to have a fun one. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent investment by Ted Weschler, who is kind of a protege of Warren Buffett. This isn't for the Berkshire Hathaway fund, but for his own personal fund. He's bought up nearly $50 million of Dillard's, a kind of a retailer that has struggled over the last couple of years. So we're going to discuss that, see if there's any read-throughs to the retail industry overall, and then we're going to talk about SPACs. We can't stop talking about SPACs. They keep coming in the news. There's 8 more clean energy SPACs expected to close before the end of the year. We're going to talk about why those are valued at $2 billion when 5 of the 8 don't have any revenue. That's going to be interesting. And then we're also going to talk about Walmart, kind of a change in strategy to get some more advertising revenue. An analyst, and Oliver Wesch, expects that they can grow their ad revenue to about $4 billion in the next 3 years. That would equate to about the quarterly ad revenue of Amazon. But again, we're just talking about the strategy and see what kind of growth that it has for Walmart moving forward.
You got it, Andrew. It's going to be a fantastic show.
Yeah.
We got a question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment from Anthony Maldonado, planning lead at NFI. I wonder how all these new trends in the consumer world will ultimately affect the reverse logistics sector. Have to imagine their value is skyrocketing whilst people will shop online and likely return some items due to sizing dislikes, etc. And we've talked about that before at our Final Mile Summit and other places where I believe, Anthony, it's something like 4 times or 400% the returns for e-commerce purchases versus like brick and mortar retail. So yeah, the stress on reverse logistics is enormous. I would believe.
It is definitely enormous. And a word from our sponsor right now. Thanks to our sponsor, Amazon Freight. Freight moves fast, and you need a shipping partner that can handle what's in front of you while also planning for the future. Amazon Freight has opened up their network to enable shippers of all sizes the ability to simplify, optimize, and invent. Tap into the expertise of Amazon with a freight partner that is here to help you navigate the road ahead. Discover what's next at freight.amazon.com.
That's right. Hit it up at freight.amazon.com right after the show.
Right after the show.
What do we got next here, brother?
We have the weather. Let's check in. I think we have some high winds, but a question for you.
Yeah.
We were talking about Warren Buffett's protege parking his $50 million in his personal account at Dillard's. Where are you parking your $50 million in your personal account?
Right now, Home Depot.
Home Depot? Okay, very good. That's a good choice. That's definitely a good choice. Let's check in.
I think I spent that much over the summer, actually.
You probably did. Let's check in on weather right now with Nick Austin.
Thanks, guys. You mentioned the high winds, and boy, there were some rollovers in Montana. Across the northern plains, the winds have been pretty brutal for the past day or so. And about 60 miles north of Great Falls yesterday, a tractor-trailer rollover. The interstate, part of it was closed for several hours. It's back open now. But this is going to be a problem, really, for the rest of today, also for tomorrow. So I certainly would highly recommend that drivers not deadhead through these areas. We're talking about from Montana all the way over to eastern Washington, including the Spokane market. So for Sonar subscribers in the critical events, you can look at the wind gust forecasts, and up in that region, we're talking about gusts of 60 to 70 miles per hour later today, even through the nighttime and into Wednesday. All these areas that are kind of shaded in that purple there that you see on the map. So it's going to be pretty widespread. And there's also going to be snow falling across parts of these parts of this region too. There's a system moving in, most of it's rainfall now, but in the higher elevations, especially above 6,000 feet in the northern Rockies and Montana, we're going to see a lot more snow falling for the next couple of days, and it could total more than a foot. So there's going to be lots of messy weather up here, and but the winds are really going to be a big concern, not just in the high elevations, but even in the plains across Montana, northern Idaho, into eastern Washington for the next day or two. So big problems up there. Truckers, just be really extra careful. But speaking of snowfall, coming up later in the show, going to talk about the states that have some of the strictest chain laws in the country. That'll be coming up later.
Yeah, there's the high winds are definitely an issue, especially with the empty truck. And if you've ever, like I have, I've driven, you know, I grew up in Oklahoma, and driving out in western Oklahoma when, you know, a nice spring day is you have hurricane force winds, and you can really, you can see trucks teetering and tottering. You can really tell who's empty and who's full.
Yeah, you're dragging a 53-foot sail behind you, especially with an empty.
Yes. And it really does look like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Nick.
At least we don't have any, we don't have hurricanes coming through this week.
We do not. we do not have Epsilon coming through.
Yeah, we don't.
Hopefully
we do
there
not.
won't be an Epsilon.
But you know what's coming out this week?
What?
Earnings.
They are, yes. Thursday. Heartland, I believe, is Thursday, and then JB Hunt is Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, I mean, an excellent article on FreightWaves.com, right? Our third quarter truckload earnings blowout, right?
Yes, yeah. Todd Maiden has a great article up on FreightWaves.com. Just came out in the newsletter too, our new newsletter. And again, if you're not a subscriber to that, go to FreightWaves.com and sign up right now. But excellent article that he published this morning about earnings preview, and
yeah, it really
everyone's
is.
Looking for a strong quarter.
They are, and it's interesting because you probably remember this. I don't know if the audience does or not, but we were calling for, no summer slump and things to continue and move forward and strong freight markets and the economy moving forward. And there was a few people going, I'm not so sure, but all that is occurring, right? In the third quarter, the volumes were obviously through the roof.
They were through the roof. And
that put a lot of pressure on capacity, and obviously the earnings very good for truckload, I would imagine, that those reports are going to be there, right? And some of the early advisory changes that have come out would indicate as well.
It really does, and I have a list of them right here. Ravi Shankar at Morgan Stanley covers the equity and truckload stocks. He's predicting outliers, right? So the laggards, I suppose, right, are expected to report inline results. So normal results should be above expectations. Okay,
so if you explain that to someone like myself, the laggard. So like beginning of third quarter, you had some people out there that were not advising that third quarter was going to be that great for them. We're expecting those to come in as fairly decent, and those that were predicting it to be good should just be blowing it out of the water.
Exactly right. Yeah. So expectations have been raised across the board. Tom Wadowitz over at UBS raised his earnings growth from mid-single digits to mid-teen growth. So quite, basically a 10-point swing.
Yeah,
10% more growth. Deutsche Bank is about the same. 18% on average is what they're calling for. So if you're not blowing out expectations, you're going to be behind everybody else. If you're just in line with expectations, right?
You're behind.
Now, I pity the companies that do not meet expectations because they are going to get hit hard.
Yeah, there's going to be some. People are going to want to know what is going on there. What are you doing to right the ship, right? I mean, you're looking at. You've got people that are reporting overbooked by 10-15% throughout the quarter. And it just got stronger throughout the third quarter.
It got stronger, and we saw that with the trailer numbers, right? Alan Adler, came up with BONKERS. And it is bonkers. 52,000. The growth on that trailer sequentially is bonkers. So you have all these bullish signs. Of course, everything that's being bought right now has shifted from services to tangible goods.
Yeah.
That are moved by truck.
That's right.
10 to 15% above. Everyone's scurrying for drivers. There's a bottleneck with the driver training schools.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It's really no wonder. You look at it, the volume's just huge, right? You got people saying 10-15% overbooked. The biggest problem that carriers, that I've heard from carriers, is seeding additional trucks to get out there and move loads that are making record income on these things, record revenue on these. The revenue per driver per mile, has got to be tremendous.
It
right
is.
now.
Covenant came out recently and increased their expectations, or
they did, and actually I've got that right here. So Chattanooga, Tennessee-based Covenant Logistics raised its expectations for the quarter, noting the freight environment in the third quarter has been favorable across all of our service offerings, leading to an operating results that are exceeding our prior expectations. That's from CFO Paul Bunn.
And that's to be expected for a company that is a refrigerated company that runs a lot of teams, a lot of expedited. That environment that we're seeing right now should fit right into their wheelhouse.
Well, you're looking at revenue between 190 and 200 million, up from 180 million. But you're also looking at a company that has 550 fewer tractors moving.
550 fewer traffic.
So,
yeah, I know, right?
And they still increased.
It is. It's amazing how the third quarter panned out, and just that run up that just never stopped, and it still hasn't stopped yet. I mean, Van O'Try is what right now?
Van O'Try is 25 plus.
And refrigerated
in 40s still.
In the 40s. So in the 40s, 2 out of every 5 loads are being rejected.
Yeah.
More than 2 out of every 5.
More than 2
almost
out of every
half,
5.
right?
Yeah, almost half. And in some markets, it's higher than that. I was just yesterday on FreightWaves Now, I was looking at Twin Falls. Twin Falls is 70%.
70%.
70% rejection.
And that's what, Idaho?
Yeah.
Twin Falls, Idaho. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And on the van side, 1 out of every 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Landstar, freight broker Landstar Systems raised its third quarter earnings guidance by 25% as well at the midpoint.
Is.
So very, very
that
strong.
That points to a strong economy. And guess who we have right now?
Oh.
Our lead economist, Anthony Smith, joining us, talking about the economics of it all. What do we have, Anthony?
Hey guys, so first and foremost, of course, happy Amazon Prime Day, or happy Prime Day, if you will. First thing that we're looking at is the impact from Prime Day, because it's not just Amazon, but many outlets that are participating in this digital craze. And so we're going to see the likes of Best Buy and a lot of other major retailers jumping in. And so looking at that, that's really going to drive up a lot of freight volumes as we move forward throughout this rest of the year, because this is really going to be the spike, or the influx for the beginning of this year's holiday season.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's and the move is not going to be really detrimental to other retailers. I wouldn't think, not with the cycle, the capacity constraints and the long cycle time getting the goods to the consumers and on shelves. It's going to be difficult. So moving it forward makes it a little bit easier, I would think.
It does. Any about on the brick and mortar traditional retailers? Is there any news on Black Friday and maybe timing of that, maybe adjusting that a little bit, Anthony?
So I think Black Friday will still be on track for its typical post-Thanksgiving timeframe. But when we look at other retailers, they are promising, they're essentially marketing their deals as Black Friday level. So if you look at Best Buy, for example, they are guaranteeing Black Friday style deals. So when we're looking at this across the board, major retailers are looking to get in on the game, because Amazon is really setting the wave for it right now over the next 2 days. So getting in on it now, then I think, of course, Black Friday will be maybe kind of leaning more towards that digital pattern that we've seen on that latter weekend on Saturday. And so when we're looking at retail this is really going to be, I think Vincent really hit the nail on the head, something that's really going to keep capacity very, very tight. And that's something that we see with the latest LMI, the Logistics Managers Index. This hit is just a preview for tomorrow because we're going to have Zach Rogers on Freightonomics tomorrow. But this hit over 70. And so this is similar to the PMI, where anything over 50 is indicative of expansion, while anything below 50 is indicative of contraction. And when we're looking at the latest LMI number, it shows that this number is well into the 70s, and this is the first time since the fourth quarter of 2018. And within that, we're seeing exponential rise within transportation pricing, which really correlates closely with our outbound tender rejection index. In addition to that, we're also seeing that capacity is tightened and warehouse capacity is really, really in a crunch right now. So typically when we're looking at these e-commerce stores, they're going to have a higher return rate than traditional brick and mortar. So that's going to lead into a whole nother host of potential problems as we get into early 2021 with potential returns this holiday season.
Returns, and I wonder, you mentioned that capacity, warehouse capacity is at a crunch right now, implying that it is quite full, correct?
Correct. So warehouse capacity is quite full right now. And I wouldn't be too surprised if outlets are competing for strategic locations in warehousing just to get closer to that final consumer. I think that's really going to be the name of the game. So I think warehousing is really going to contribute to the tightening and capacity for not only warehousing and this e-commerce craze right now, but also we're looking at getting closer to those final consumers. And as we lean more and more heavily into e-commerce compared to brick and mortar, this is going to be something I think is going to be really a driver for transportation prices overall.
So there's a lot of talk and about action or no action with a second round of stimulus coming through for the consumer. Do you have any the latest news on that, or what you think might happen if it doesn't come through?
Definitely. And so that's one of the areas that we've watched closely, right? So we're looking at the stimulus package, because after that first round of stimulus with that $1,200 check, and addition to those bonus benefits for, I think, the jobless claims, I think was around $600 increase in addition to each state benefit. So that really kind of increased a lot of individual purchasing habits, because we saw households have more disposable income. Since then, we've seen overall retail sales and consumer spending slow down, but still stay positive. Within that, we saw that the subsectors within retail sales, like e-commerce, so non-store retail goods, building product materials, things like that, have stayed strong. So not every subsector of retail sales have stayed unfazed, but some have been able to thrive. So we're looking at overall, I think there will definitely be some benefit if we can get some more additional stimulus, but seems like the consumer is staying strong. I think they will definitely benefit from an additional stimulus check, even if it's not the additional $600 on a weekly basis. So where I think when we're looking at overall retail sales and overall economic activity, there will definitely be, I think, something to gain with additional stimulus. But I wouldn't bet on it right now, although it does seem like it's a bit held off for post-election potentially. But there are a lot of back and forths on Twitter, of course, going over negotiations on both sides. But it does sound like both sides do want a stimulus, and that is a potential that could happen. And if it does, that will definitely increase some consumer confidence and spending going forward.
Yeah, I imagine it definitely would. In the LMI numbers, is there any indication there of the industrial side of the economy? What are you seeing there?
Sure. So when we're looking at the LMI, it is broken down into many subcomponents, but one of the interesting things that Zach Rogers does from Colorado State University is that he breaks it into downstream and upstream. And so looking at more upstream on the industrial side, it is showing that it's not quite as strong or not quite as active as downstream, more consumer-facing side is, but we are still seeing some tighter capacity crunch. I think we're looking at upstream manufacturing, industrial type goods. There's a lot more difficulty in moving these goods. And so you need a little bit more of a head time, a leeway in order to get these goods moved into different factories and into different warehousing, where with downstream goods, you can kind of maneuver those and really kind of get those in and out of different warehousing and strategic locations. So not a lot from the LMI on the industrial side. Of course, we're looking for the PMI a little bit more on that side, but is showing that there is still some tight capacity when we're looking at industrial segments.
So, Anthony, let's talk about your favorite metric about the consumer, about the industrials as well, and that is housing. I know you're a huge fan of that. What do we have on new sales and existing sales, and what's that telling us about economic activity as well?
Definitely. So even within housing, one of my favorite indices, going back to some of my earlier days here at FreightWaves, is the Home Purchasing Sentiment Index from Fannie Mae, of course. And so when looking at that, that is increasing. So I think we saw a reading just over 70 as well for the HPSI, and that's showing us that consumers are feeling more and more optimistic about now being a good time to make a home purchase. And so when we're looking at Home Purchasing Sentiment Index, more consumers are feeling confident. I think a lot of that's going to be propped up by these historically low interest or mortgage rates that consumers can take part in. The big thing that's really impacting housing overall is going to be the lack of inventory. So even when we're looking at existing home sales, inventory is extremely tight, especially when we're looking at entry-level homes. And when we look at new homes, of course, that is permits are leading into showing that there's going to be more activity moving forward, but that has slowed down just a tad bit in the most recent releases. But consumers are still looking to make purchases or home purchases right now. I think a lot of that has to do definitely with these mortgage rates right now.
Excellent, Anthony. Thank you so much. So you got Freightonomics later on today. Is that right?
We have Freightonomics coming up on tomorrow, and we're going to have a special guest, Zach Rogers from Colorado State University. So he is one of the main contributors to the Logistics Managers Index, and of course, I always forget a couple, but Colorado State University, Arizona State, Rochester Institute of Technology, University of Reno, Nevada, Arizona State University. So a collaboration of sorts, and we're going to go over some in a little bit more depth of what's happening within the Logistics Managers Index. Again, warehousing capacity crunch has really been the tale of the tape for overall warehousing and the Logistics Managers Index in the overall industry right now.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Anthony. I'll be watching that one for sure. Joining us now, you know who we got, Kevin Hill?
Why didn't you tell us?
I will tell you. We've got Mark Yeager, CEO of Redwood Logistics, joining us now. Thank you for coming on the show. Mark, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. So where are you at right now?
I am in our office in Chicago, Lincoln Park.
All right. Very good. Very good. Very good. Awesome. So just very quickly, I mean, I know you, so does Kevin, but a little bit about yourself, Mark, and talk to us a little bit about Redwood.
Sure, absolutely. So, I'm the CEO of Redwood Logistics. Previously, I was the president, chief operating officer of Hub Group, right? Worked in that side of the industry for about 23 years, hooked up with private equity, CI Capital, looking to build a platform in the logistics space. Lucky enough to come across Redwood, which was on our short list and is an exciting company. We are a private equity-backed transportation management company. We have about 700 employees, strong growth track record. We've done 6 acquisitions in the last 2 years since taking on CI as a partner. We're a trans management company that's really evolving into a logistics platform. And we're pretty excited about where the company is headed. And we really have 3 basic business lines. On the one side is digital freight brokerage. That's the thing we're best known for. We're probably number 12 in the U.S. On the other side of the spectrum is what we call platform services. And that's a little bit non-traditional, but it's implementation, integration, and optimization of TMS and other supply chain technology. And then right in the middle is managed services, which is transportation management, bringing the tools of the Fortune 50 to the Fortune 50,000.
Excellent stuff, Mark. Thank you. Now, we were talking earlier, and I believe last week we were talking about it. And the interesting thing to me was really about the kind of the philanthropic nature of the management there at Redwood, the hero challenge and the Redwood games, that type of stuff, and the philosophy that giving back is really a central theme within, or central to your DNA there at Redwood Logistics. Can you kind of speak to that philosophy and what's the inspiration there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'd love to take credit for that, but it's really been a part of our fabric for a long time. The company has always placed quite a bit of emphasis on social responsibility, and you know, this is not philanthropy by fiat, right? This is really driven from the bottom up. We tend to look for and recruit people that are passionate at Redwood. And what we find is that passionate people are passionate about more than just their job, right? They want to give back. They want to contribute to society. They want to know that the company that they're working for has common values, right? So I think we've always placed a tremendous amount of emphasis on philanthropy. It energizes our people. They feel good about it. And, you know, right now there's a lot of causes out there that need help. So I think we discovered a long time ago that together as a company, we can do much more than any individual can on their own. And that really drives a lot of behavior here.
And Mark, I guess a large part of that is the Redwood Games. And, you know, it being 2020, some people say it's 2020 is a little bit different than other years. So there's some challenges, I think, if you've been around 2020 at all. So what was the thought process about the Redwood Games and how you structured that this year?
Yeah, so things are definitely a little bit different this year. You know, normally with the Redwood Games, it's a month-long fundraising event where, you know, we as a team select a charity and get behind creative ways to raise money. And we do all kinds of things, right? There's tournaments, and people make cookies and make T-shirts and, you know, all kinds of things to bring money for a good cause. So in 2019, it was juvenile diabetes for us. And the year before that, it was Heroes and Horses. So sometimes Redwood Games is a big event with a big charity. And then other times it's directed more towards a smaller charity where we really can have a huge impact. So we go for about a month raising all kinds of money in all kinds of creative ways. And it culminates with a big party on Montrose Beach where we celebrate the month, celebrate the company, and celebrate the cause that we're donating to. It's an amazing event, incredibly high energy. I've honestly never been to a corporate event like it. I've been to a lot of corporate events where people don't want to be there, and that's not the case with Redwood Games. I think it really capitalizes on the competitive spirit that we have at Redwood and the mission of philanthropy that's really part of most of our employees. And this year was a little bit different, right? Because you can't have a big party on Montrose Beach, right? That's not an option. So what we decided, though, was that there was, maybe more than ever, the need to reach out and to help. And so we launched what we call the Hero Challenge. And the Hero Challenge really tasked our employees to come up with creative ways, once again, to help out for people who are on the front lines battling COVID right now. So we're talking about doctors and nurses, but we're also talking about truck drivers, people working in food pantries, people working in warehouses, right? All, don't have the option to stay home, right? And so they're out there, and we felt that we needed to find ways to reach out and, help them. So we organized the company into 31 different teams. They all came up with some amazing, amazingly creative ways to raise money. So we had, people doing stand-up comedy shows. We were virtual streaming concerts. Of course, making masks and things that fit the theme of 2020. But we ended up raising, the employees amongst themselves raised $54,000, and the company matched it. So a total of $108,000 for frontline workers, and it was a great thing. It really brought the company together, I think, at a time where we felt like we really wanted to make sure that we connected closely, with our entire employee base, because we're still 85% remote, right? So we definitely wanted to make sure that folks really still felt like they were part of the Redwood family, and I think this really helped us do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier about the whole work from home and how it is people feel disenfranchised from the company, and that's a tremendous way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits from those efforts, those philanthropic efforts. Obviously, the people who are beneficiaries of the money raised and the donations, but also, like you said, the team building, the employee morale, the productivity, everything is increased by those type of things, and it's really tremendous stuff. I love to see companies like Redwood and yourself doing these type of things. I'd like to shift gears a little bit. Redwood Logistics obviously is involved in many verticals within logistics, right? You've got your multi-brokerage dedicated, your Mexico distribution, supply chain consulting, even tech innovation as well. Can you talk a little bit about the disruptive nature that this year has had really on the supply chain and kind of that exposure to the worldwide supply chains?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember a time that was more disruptive, you know, on a global scale, right? I don't think anybody was prepared for this kind of an issue. I've seen hurricanes, you know, we've seen political strife, we've seen a lot of different things that were disruptive, but this is an order of magnitude greater than anything that I've ever experienced in my career. I think if you look at what happened, you know, with particularly folks that were heavily dependent on Asia for their supply chain, which is a huge percentage of you know, U.S. businesses, and that was massively disrupted, and we saw, you know, significant shortages and continue to see fairly significant shortages within our ability to import. That seems to be turning, and we are now, you're seeing imports pick up, you know, substantially, but there's still a lot of shippers out there that are having trouble getting the raw materials that they need to make the goods that that they need to make. So that has been significantly disrupted. Domestically, we certainly have seen a roller coaster ride within the markets, right? We saw a lot of restocking activity in March. We saw things go very, very quiet in April. It has built steadily since then, and we have seen a significant rebound in August and September, and it looks like October is moving forward well as well. So I'd say it's still a challenging market out there. There's still, you know, a lot of disruption, but we do seem to be making some progress and some headway in terms of getting things back to more normalized patterns. But big time shortages in the truckload side. There's been tremendous instability in steamship rates as well, which have gotten highly inflated at this point. So I think shippers are really struggling to manage their supply chains in an effective way and kind of mitigate the cost exposure that all this has produced.
Yeah, Mark, certainly 2020 has been a challenge. The stress tested just about every supply chain. What's one trend that you've seen come out or come up in the last 6 months that you think will stick around for forever?
Yeah, so, well, I think there's a few for sure, right? I think that folks are looking very seriously at more nearshoring. Right, you know, I think there's no question about it. We're seeing massive activity in Mexico. You know, that's a segment that we started up a year and a half ago, and Mexico is very busy market right now. Anybody that can pull manufacturing to Mexico away from Asia, I think, is doing so. I think we're likely to see that trend continue probably for a very long period of time. I think you're going to see folks getting a little bit less aggressive in terms of JIT strategy, right? If we don't have a little bit of a cushion in our inventory levels, we are definitely risking the kind of exposure that we've seen over the course of the last few months. And you know, the obvious one is e-commerce, right? There's no question. This has been a sort of catalyst for probably a trend that was naturally occurring anyway, definitely was, but this has really accelerated it. I don't see us going back to a more traditional brick and mortar dependency in the way that we always have been historically. I think that's a permanent change, and folks are now hooked on e-commerce, and it's going to continue to take share.
Agreed, definitely. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Mark. And how does our audience reach out and learn more about Redwood?
Yeah, so we're at redwoodlogistics.com. We have an upcoming Women in Logistics Forum on November 12th. Would love to have everybody attend, but there's a lot of other good things going on at Redwood. So please feel free to log on and see what we're all about.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
That. Very interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, always interesting to talk to Mark. Very,
it definitely is.
A great leader. I love what they're doing there at Redwood. And I wanted to. We ran out of time there, but I wanted to ask him what he saw as silver linings out of all this type of stuff. I mean, there's always something good that comes out of.
There is.
Stress.
And we've gone over a lot of good news lately since we started doing this show about the Redwood Games is one of those that. Certainly giving back is always good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're joined now by Richard Sharpe, CEO of Competitive Insights, talking about supply chain as well and 2020. How are you doing today, Richard?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
Good.
We are doing great. Can you give our audience a brief summary of yourself and Competitive Insights and what you guys do?
Certainly. We are an analytics-based company. We focus on providing actionable insights on costs and profit by SKU, by product, and by channel. And we use that information to be a foundation to solve specific supply chain initiatives, such as supply chain risk.
That's interesting because we were just talking about the effects of some of the changes caused by the disruptive nature of the crisis, right? The COVID-19, obviously, everybody knows about 2020.
Sure.
But talking about nearshoring and everybody who's moving their manufacturing who can move their manufacturing from Asia to Mexico is doing it. It's kind of, it may be a bit of an exaggeration, but Mark Yeager, CEO of Redwood, was talking about how Mexico market right now is on fire. You guys analyze down to the SKU and the movement of the SKU and the channel of that SKU. Are you seeing people kind of separate that a little bit out depending on what the product is and where those supply chain capacity crunches are and those pressures on cost?
Michael, that's a wonderful question. Let me give you an example of that. Let's say that you have 77 suppliers that are all contributing to your product portfolio. Out of those 77 suppliers, the University of Tennessee issued out a survey on the risk associated with doing business in particular countries. And let's say that one of your best suppliers is in the Philippines, and you have decided to do exactly that. You want to diversify the manufacturing footprint and be able to protect the operating profits of the company. Out of all those 77 suppliers, your number one supplier is giving you 850 products. And the normal strategy for diversification is how do we shift that to another geography, maybe have to add a little cost. Well, what if we told you that out of 850 products, only 51 gave you 80% of your profit? Your priority would be to protect those 51 products.
Yeah, I would think so.
It definitely would. It definitely would, and that's what we talked about last time you were on the show, Richard. We got into the Pareto rule, and you see that through supply chains all through the place. And I'm always fascinated with the Pareto rule. Are you seeing U.S. companies and importers really being aggressive about slimming down maybe the number of either the number of suppliers or the number of SKUs that 80, that 20% that, or 80% that make up only 20% of your revenue that you're spending all your time and money on? Or are you seeing a more aggressive stance right now?
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about SKU proliferation, because your point is exactly correct. What manufacturers are doing is they're looking at how to reduce the number of products that they're making because the capacity limitations are there and they can't continue to make everything for everyone. So it's no longer a one size fits all. They've got to be really smart about where they're applying their resources in order to be able to keep up with the demand for those that have that surge in demand. So it's absolutely the right way to go, and we are seeing a lot of that activity.
Yeah, and I think you just coined a term that we'll probably use further on, SKU proliferation. Right, Michael Vincent?
I wrote it down.
I know.
So Richard, we talk about, it seems ad nauseum, but it's really interesting to me. I love this industry, and I love what's the effects of what's going on right now with the advancement in technology, the real push forward. We talk about how crises on societies kind of make it happen in leaps and bounds. They increase the velocity of those changes, right? Somebody said during our event last week, the last mile event, that we had 5 years compressed into 3 months, right, of advancement. Right. And I'm wondering, what are those for what you guys do there in the analyzing the SKU proliferation and the supply channels. The advancement in these technologies have got to be really a boon for you guys as well, right? With the advancement of IoT devices, et cetera. Is that what you guys are seeing as technology really advances this type of effort?
Absolutely, but it's really a mandate, I think. Technology is a key essential part to supply chain risk management, no doubt. But there are multiple forms of technology that we really should highlight for the audience. One is just having better, and they all focus on having better visibility. So visibility around where the market is and where capacity is, sonar as an example of that for you guys. But looking at visibility associated with asset tracking. So now we're thinking about control towers, right? And where are our products and where are our assets in case there is a disruption? So a second form of visibility that's essential to develop an effective program. But there's also the visibility of impact. Where is it going to hurt the most, either if the event has occurred or you're looking to protect your operation for a future event? And that all focuses back down to understanding the profit and cost contributions for products and customers and channels, so that when you have limited resources, you're going to apply them where it matters the most. Technology is key.
It's definitely king. Richard, I asked Mark this in our last segment. I'm going to ask you this as well. What's the number one trend that has come out of this crisis that you think will that will stick around and be mainstream very soon and will continue long after this?
Well, I think it's the topic of this discussion. I think it's going to be the fact that people are no longer going to give lip service to supply chain risk mitigation programs. I believe that this is going to be a mandated requirement for shareholders and stakeholders for the companies that they invest in. McKinsey just released a study where hundreds of companies over multiple industries. Out of all the supply chain executives that they talked to, 93% said they had initiatives focused on supply chain resiliency. 93%. Mm-hmm. It is here. It will have to continue to be a priority for the organizations as they're moving forward, because nobody wants to endure the financial and disruptive events that have occurred after COVID without, being better prepared.
Richard, I hope you're right. I hope we're not talking about it because it's in the news right now and it is in the forefront. And once the world returns back to normal, it kind of fades away. Hopefully we can keep it up in the forefront of everyone's minds, both of us working together. Thank you again for your time today. It was wonderful talking to you again on the Midday Market Update. And how does our audience reach out to learn more about yourself and Competitive Insights?
Thank you. It's www.ci-advantage.com. www.ci-advantage.com. And we'd be delighted to answer additional questions. And thank you for having me again. I always enjoy this.
Thank you very much, Richard. Have
a great day. Thank you, Richard.
Well, why don't we check in on the weather real quick?
Okay.
What do we have, Nick Austin?
Hey guys, we have snow and rain up in the northwestern U.S. It's going to be pretty messy. It's already mixing with snow and even changing to snowfall in parts of Montana, western Montana right now. For sonar subscribers, they can go right into critical events, pop up that radar, and where you see the pink and the blue on the radar here in western Montana, really, really messy weather. In the high elevations, there could be a lot of snow piling up over the next couple of days. So drivers are going to have to chain up, particularly the West Glacier region up to around Logan Pass and portions of U.S. Highway 2. So they're going to have to chain up. And speaking of chaining up, Montana doesn't have really tight or strict chain laws. I think Colorado probably tops the list as far as having some of the strictest rules in the country regarding fines, how many months the chain laws are in effect. But if you want to find out who rounds out the top 5, there's an article about that on our website, freightwaves.com. So go check that out, everybody.
Yeah, and what does that round out? It was Colorado, North Dakota.
I just pulled it up right now.
Did you just pull it up? That's good.
I don't know what order these are in, though.
No particular order.
Oh, they aren't. Okay, so so Colorado, California, Washington, South Dakota, and Utah.
How does that compare, Nick? How does that compare with you wrote an article last week on the 5 worst states for driving in the weather, I think.
Yeah, some of them do overlap and coincide, that's for sure. But it kind of depends on what type of weather you're talking about. Of course, winter weather, ice is definitely the worst for drivers. But I've heard drivers also comment that, for instance, drivers with some of the worst weather, or states with some of the worst weather for drivers, Texas actually made that list because a lot of drivers say, all right, we don't hit a lot of snow and ice there, but in a lot of areas we hit sudden heavy rain and flash flooding, and that can cause problems. But some of the states, some of the areas are the same on both of those lists, that's for sure, mainly because of the winter weather, especially where there's higher terrain where they get winter weather, like out west.
Exactly right. Yeah, to get more articles just like this about weather-related for drivers, you can go to freightwaves.com, or you can also Google Nick Austin FreightWaves, and it'll come up with his author page.
Amen. Thanks, Nick.
So thanks, Nick.
Bet.
Have you ever had to change chains, Kevin?
I have not.
No, I've done it on a car going through Grants Pass.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a pain. I can't imagine doing it. Well, I didn't know what I was doing either. You know what I mean?
I know
and then taking them off there, it's frozen.
I booked a load in Fort McMurray one time, and the driver showed up and he couldn't put on his chains. Oh. You think if you're up in Fort McMurray, you'd know how to put chains on your wheel, but
yeah,
I don't know how to put chains on.
I was shocked we had
really
chains in the trunk to put on our car, to tell you the truth. I was like, what are we going to do? We had chains. Oh, okay.
I know.
So what do we got coming up?
So we talked about great quarter guys a few minutes ago. So we're going to talk about a lot of really cool things. Tomorrow at noon, put that coffee down. The Freight Sales Podcast. Stu and I will be talking to Paul. I forget his last name, unfortunately, right now. Paul from Emerge Market or Emerge, and he used to be a shipper. So we're going to get the mindset of a shipper and kind of the biggest mistakes to avoid if you're trying to sell services to a shipper, and best practices to go out there and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what else is on everybody's mind? There's 2 things, really, and maybe you don't know this because maybe it's not on everybody's mind, but they're in the news. One is because it's cold, the cold chain. Right?
It is cold chain.
And you got the vaccine coming up potentially that is going to have to be moved at temperature control. There's a possibility of the military being involved in that type of stuff. But you also have, refrigerated right now is the volumes are huge and the pressure on the capacity is immense with the OTRI, right? And that's all part of cold chain supply chain, right? So we've got an event. Our next event, when is it? October 23rd is the next event at the Cold Chain Summit. We'll examine how they have adapted to this surge in demand and what new strategies can be adopted to ensure success when our economy returns to normal or stays in the new normal, I would imagine.
True.
Really interesting, the differences between, what goes on and just, what you consider freight and then cold chain. It is,
and we have thing. On FreightWaves.com right now, Americold acquires Agro Merchants Group in $1.74 billion deal.
Wow.
So that's up on FreightWaves.com right now. And you can find all the FreightWaves shows on demand on FreightWaves TV, the app, or on your favorite podcast player, or subscribe to FreightCast and get every single FreightWave podcast all on one feed. That feed is also the exclusive audio home to this show right here, the Midday Market Update. Right and on. Thursday, what do you have on freight forecasting?
Thursday on Freight Forecasting, Zach Strickland will be on with me, and we'll be going through bid season, right? We're going through bid season. We're going to be going through the different data that you need and how to look at it and what we think is going to happen through here. There's, 6%, 10%, 11%, 12%. What are going to be the increases in the contract rates, right?
It will be interesting. But that does it for this show.
Peace and love, everyone.